Thank you, and welcome to Caliper's webinar, Leading Through Tough Times. I'm Patrick Sweeney, the president of Caliper. Today, I'm very pleased to share with you how some top companies are leading their people through these tough times. I'd like to also mention that all registrants will receive an email with links to slides and a recording of today's presentation. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. With us today is George Bruff. George is a director of Caliper in Brazil. He has vast global experience with counseling and coaching both individuals and teams to help them improve their performance in the workplace. Also, we'll be talking with Skip Cimino. Skip is the CEO of Robert Wood Johnson in Hamilton, New Jersey. He will be sharing with us what he is learning now as a leader and how he is working with other leaders and top performers to help create effective teams. In addition, we'll be talking with Doug DeVello, who is the Vice President of Professional and Support Services at Central Maine Medical Center. Doug will be sharing with us how he is positioning himself as a mentor to help his people as he coaches them along the way. Finally, we'll be speaking with Marcy Payne. Marcy is the Senior Vice President of Associate Relations and Talent Management at TCIM Services, and she'll be talking with us about what TCIM is doing to develop their leaders and help them motivate their people in these very tough times. Now, let me just quickly go over with you what we're going to be discussing during today's session. We'll be discussing how leaders are engaging their top performers, how leadership teams are able to effectively work together to achieve results, how leaders are using the tough economy to their advantage, and how executives are doing more with less. Before we dive in, I'd like to introduce Herb Greenberg, Caliper's founder and CEO. Herb, as we prevail through these tough times, I know leaders are learning a lot about themselves and about the people they surround themselves with.
Well, I as a CEO have done this for 48 and a half years, and I have never experienced anything like this. In the last number of months, there's been a remarkable change which really points to what leaders need to do to lead through these tough times. People are saying basically to us, I want to make sure we keep our good people. I want to make sure that we concentrate on those people that are valuable. What do we need to do to train, to coach, to develop the people that we can go to war with, if you will, over the next decade and rebuild from the drop that we've all experienced?
When we're challenged, we end up learning about ourselves, learning things that we hadn't realized, finding out things about ourselves that we know we either are naturally good at or might need some help at. Right now, companies are not just looking to what someone can do, but can they grow with the company? What do you look for in someone who can grow with your company?
The key is to find out what somebody can do, almost like you're hiring a new person, to find out what the person can do as opposed to what he or she happens to be doing in their current role.
Great, Herb. Thank you. Now let's turn to George Bruff. George is a director of Caliper in Brazil. Caliper has offices in 12 countries around the world, and George has spent a great deal of time coaching leaders and top performers in many of those countries. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today, George.
Patrick, thank you. It's wonderful to be here again.
We'd love to talk with you about some of the things you've been noticing and some of the things that you've seen, particularly changes, because this last year is certainly one that none of us are going to forget for a long time.
Sure.
In terms of coaching with leaders, what were they wrestling with most, and what were you able to help them with?
I think the biggest challenge is in terms of resources, human resources, time resources, money resources, even in terms of physical resources when companies have had to shut down offices and things like that. One of the big challenges that many, many managers face is that they're trying to do the same thing with fewer resources. And that doesn't work. You can't just say to the people, work harder. produce more.
Right.
What you need to do, and this is the fascinating thing in terms of the companies that are actually coming out of this financial situation better, they're the ones who had the courage to blow it up and say, we need to do things differently. Let's say we had 10 people in our team, we now have 8 people. And the companies that are falling behind are the companies who are saying, let's just see if it blows over. Let's wait until we can get back to having 10 people in the team. Well, unfortunately, bad news for you. You probably will never have 10 people back in your team. And even if you do, you're only going to be as efficient as you were previously, whereas your competition are going to be 3 times more efficient because they've discovered a better way of doing it. So a lot of what we're doing with customers in the coaching is helping them say, look at the pieces that you've got. Don't spend time agonizing about what you don't have, the time you don't have, the people you don't have, the difficulties that exist. Spend your time and energy saying, how can we maximize what we've got? And one of the reasons for that is that I've yet to meet a customer anywhere in the world who, when you ask their team how much of your potential you think is being used, say 100%. Nobody is using 100% of their potential.
What answer do you generally get?
Generally between 30 and 35% in the good companies.
In good companies,
Yeah.
they say between 30 and 35%. What are people doing with the other 65% of their potential?
They're having fun, they've got hobbies, they're doing other things, they're spending their time at the water cooler complaining. And what's interesting is that you say to leaders, how would you like an extra 5-10% in your team? It's like, yeah, I'd love it. Well, it's there. Now, the secret is, how do you unlock that? And most of how you unlock that has to do with the leader getting over his or her issues. It's the leader being able to say, okay, I need to let go of what we did before. I need to let go of what I believe necessarily is the only way to do things. And I need to get in touch with the people and say, how do we do more? How do we do it differently? I, as a leader, don't need to have all the right answers. I don't need to be the smartest, the quickest, the toughest.
Well, that's so intriguing because I know Robert Wood Johnson is coming across that same challenge that you mentioned before, George. They are tasked with doing more with less, but still providing that same quality service. We're going to turn now to Skip Cimino. Skip is the CEO of Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in Hamilton, New Jersey, and it was the first New Jersey hospital to receive the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. Great to have you with us here, Skip.
Thank you for having me, Patrick.
What we want to do is talk with you about leading, particularly during these very tough and difficult times. And so many organizations are stretching and trying to figure out how to do more with less. How does that affect a hospital, particularly one of your magnitude, and how do you come to terms with that?
Well, clearly, the issue of having to do more with less is paramount for all hospital administrators in the country. The way that we have looked at this is not to look at it from a command and control perspective at the very top of the organization, but we have invited the input of every level of our employees in the process of dealing with reductions in resources and how to better deliver the services that we need to deliver on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year basis. Our belief is that in economic times like this, or in point of fact in dealing in any times, that the people closest to the source of the work potentially have the best ideas as to how to do the work more efficiently.
That's so interesting the way you described that, Skip. Just to back up for a little bit, in other words, you're the CEO of Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, but your background is not in healthcare. You approach this as a leader, right?
That is correct. I approach this from a different perspective. While I have served 21 years on the board of directors and at one point in time was chairman of the board of trustees, my professional career has not been one in the area of healthcare. It has been in management functions, whether I had been in the role as Commissioner of Personnel for the state of New Jersey, responsible for 235,000 positions in the personnel system of state, county, local government, and in some cases boards of education, or as a leader in directing a large, nationally recognized engineering firm. All of those opportunities as a leader, quite frankly, gave me the benefit as well as the experience in coming into this role as to how to shape, lead, nurture, guide, and direct the management team here to seek the input as well of the employees. At the end of the day, our most precious resource here at RWJ Hamilton is our human resource.
Right, right. And I thank you for explaining that, because the principles of leadership that you've brought with you from other disciplines apply equally as well here, if not more so, because you're dealing with a situation where quality cannot be sacrificed in any way.
Well, in all candor, Patrick, in the new paradigm, quality, outcomes, and service, while they have been important, will become even more important in the future.
You were talking before, Skip, about how your approach to leading is to listen to the people who, in this case, are closest to the patients. How do you create a formal way of identifying and recognizing people on your staff who have talent, who have the potential to move up?
Well, we've used a number of different platforms, one of which is, quite frankly, to use Caliper as a testing vehicle. It is certainly not a testing vehicle to make a final determination about anyone, but it allows us to understand the strengths and opportunities within an individual, and by doing so, it allows us to blend together people in a more cohesive unit. By doing so, we create greater efficiencies for ourselves. Clearly, one of the things that we've worked on this year in doing that has been our length of stay, which is a very, very important issue for any hospital. And by virtue of being able to align the right people, we have been able to manage our length of stay to a much greater degree, which represents a significant savings to the hospital. And we've also created organizational and strategic goals, which then go down to departmental goals, which then go down to individual goals. So by virtue of our psychometric testing, by virtue of our strategic planning and our organizational goals, we've created a direct alignment from the Board of Trustees, who have the fiduciary responsibility for the community asset known as a hospital, all the way down to the individual performance, and have created an alignment so that everybody is pulling the oars in the same direction.
That's a very thorough and comprehensive, and as you said, very well aligned approach, Skip. I'd love to hear your thoughts as you've led Robert Wood Johnson as well as earlier in your career. One of the most difficult challenges for someone who's leading often, and criticisms that somebody will give to leaders, they don't let go of enough. They don't know when to delegate. They're carrying too much. And I know there's a lot of issues that come into that. Some of them have to do with control. Some of them have to do with trust. Some of them have to do with understanding the real capabilities of someone else and being able to let go. How have you come to terms with that individually? I'd love to hear what lessons you might have for other individuals looking or stepping into leadership positions.
Well, I think there are a couple of basic things that I have always tried to approach both my personal life as well as my professional career with, and that is as it relates to employees and or managers coming to work each and every day. I sincerely believe that people come to work every day to give you an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. I do not believe that people come into the workplace with the intention of not doing a good job. I also believe that inherently the human resource brings great value to a company or to a hospital or what have you. And because they bring great value, I think you have to place real trust in your interaction with people. I also think that there is, in terms of delegation, a measure of allowing risk-taking and not have risk-taking be penalized. If we all think about it, we all have to learn. Many times, as I look back over my career, I learned from failures and mistakes versus probably more than I did from the positive outcome.